Hello guys, in this video I'm going to be building this Tamiya 1/20th scale Williams FW07 Formula 1 car. To be honest with you, I either didn't film or more likely lost the initial box shots of this kit, so I've stolen this image from scalemates.com to show you what it looks like, and I'll start the build process while I tell you a bit about this kit. So the Williams FW07 is an F1 car from the 1979 Formula 1 season, and the Tamiya kit was released just the year after in 1980. As far as I can tell, Tamiya haven't ever re-released this kit, and certainly the version I had the original Japanese text on the box as well as the English, and the instructions in fact were only in Japanese, and I had to translate even the paint call-outs into English. So this kit is definitely going back a bit. It's 43 years old right now. In the 1979 season, the car was driven by Alan Jones and Clay Regazzoni, and this car was really one of the pioneering cars in the development of ground effect technology, using skirts on the sides of the car to seal the area under the car next to the ground and produce an area of low pressure which essentially sucked the car to the ground and massively increased the downforce. The FW07 had a bit of a shaky start to the season, but after a couple of changes, Clay Regazzoni won the 1979 British Grand Prix, and then at the hands of Jones the car took 4 more victories in the next 6 races. And this really marked the start of the Williams team becoming a major contender in Formula 1. The car was modified slightly for the 1980 season and became known as the FW07B, which you could make from this kit, and with the decals which I'll show you later. In 1980, Carlos Reutemann replaced Regazzoni and took 1 win, while Jones took 5 wins and won the World Drivers' Championship. And in fact, Jones actually took 2 more race victories in Spain and Australia, but neither of those counted towards the World Championship. Perhaps an indication of how far ahead of its time the car was is that it was modified again into the FW07C for the 1981 season, and between them Jones and Reutemann took 4 more victories, although due to infighting between them they did both miss out on the World Drivers' Championship. But they took Williams to their second Constructors Championship. The FW07C took part in the early part of the 1982 season before being replaced by its successor. I was extremely lucky recently to do a tour of the Williams Heritage Centre down near Oxford, where you can do a tour of their museum with virtually all of their F1 cars there, including the FW7 models. If you're an F1 fan at all, I would thoroughly recommend visiting. They've got all the cars there as they were when they were racing, and they've even got Villeneuve's FW19 from the 1997 World Championship with the tyre marks down the side where he was hit by Schumacher at Jerez. And in fact, if you want to see an FW07 racing today, you still can, because they are raced in the FIA Masters Historic F1 Championship, also known in the UK as the Masters Racing Legends, and you can see those racing flat out against other period F1 cars. In fact, I think their next round is August the 25th to the 27th at the Silverstone Classic. A really fantastic event. I've spectated there, I've marshalled there. It's really fantastic to see these 1980s era cars going absolutely full tilt through Beckett's and Maggots down the Hanger Straight into Stowe. Really great experience if you are an F1 fan. Anyway, back to the build now, and as always with car kits, I've been working here on sub-assemblies, working out what can go together and will be painted the same colour, what needs to be painted separately and then glued together, and what can be sort of glued together and then just hand painted, brush painted, different colours. These classic F1 cars are slightly harder to build than the more recent ones because you don't have the single piece carbon fibre floor which everything fits on top. So we've got a sort of a top and bottom here to the main chassis, and then the engine fits into the back of that, so quite a different design to modern F1 cars. The FW07 was powered by the Ford DFV engine, really a ubiquitous engine for F1 at the time, and I built so many of these, or their variants, for the various F1 cars that I've built. You'll notice me doing some filling and sanding of the ejector pin marks too, because parts of the inside of this chassis will be visible on the final result. Tamiya do typically include some chromed parts in their F1 kits. In this case, both the roll cage and the wheels and certain parts of the radiator system. Personally, I do tend to prime over that and then paint it chrome myself, simply because if you cut these from the sprue, then you're going to leave patches in the chrome anyway, and it's very hard to paint that and make it match the original chrome. The main cockpit piece is interesting to paint because you have a combination of the exterior white colour and the internal aluminium colour, which gets covered up by the top engine cover piece. In general, I find it best to paint the white first and then mask that off and paint the aluminium. If you do it the other way around, I find that sometimes the masking tape can pull up, not pull up the aluminium paint, but take a certain sheen off the paint, and there's clearly marks where the tape has been. In terms of paint, I use Tamiya rattle cans for the white, so TS26 is their pure white colour, and then XF16 for the aluminium. I made this car a while ago, to be honest. Since then I've kind of moved to the Vallejo metal colours range, but good old Tamiya XF16 still does a solid job. Here we mate the top to the underside of the car, having made sure that the centre of the underside is also painted aluminium because we can see that through the floor. Here I am adding a few details: the fire extinguisher, front suspension arms, and dials in the cockpit. Here you can see everything being put together, glued together. There are lots of contact points between the upper and the lower, so it makes it quite easy to get everything stuck in a solid fashion. But of course here I'm using tape just to bind it together while the glue dries. The engine itself is a complete separate sub-assembly. You've seen me build this earlier in the video. Obviously there are lots of sub-assemblies here, lots of separate detail painting. And then the engine attaches like so. And then we can add the exhausts, which are a little bit fiddly. And a few final details to the engine. The engines on these older cars tend to be a lot more visible than on the modern F1 cars, so you don't really have the option of building them curbside. A quick look at the original Tamiya decal sheet is going to tell you that no amount of sun bleaching is going to bring these babies back to the way they should be. So a complete new decal sheet is required. Luckily these are quite easy to find for these old Tamiya kits, and quite a few different brands produce them. This one I've got here is from, is it Shunko or Museum Collection? I forget now, to be honest. You can see here though it does have options for the 1979 Dutch Grand Prix and the 1980 Brazilian Grand Prix, so really just slightly different liveries there. We've got the tag livery on the 79 version and the Leyland on the 1980 version. And there are also slight differences in other areas. I actually went for the 1980 version simply because I like that Leyland livery. I feel like it's got that classic kind of British logo on it. I really like that. You'll notice that the decals do include the green stripes. I would normally avoid these large coloured decal areas like the plague, but for some reason I decided to use them on this kit rather than masking off and spray painting. I'm not quite sure why. I think perhaps partly because there aren't really any curved areas that have them, and so I thought they would be okay. And actually, to be honest, they were, apart from one small problem which I'll show you later. But as you can see, they did go down nicely, partly because of the lovely gloss finish that the TS26 paint left. And they very handily cut those decals into two for us, because of course that engine cowling gets removed. This is always my favourite part of an F1 build, transforming a sort of fairly plain kit into what looks like a real racing car, hopefully. Always good fun. You'll notice here that I left off the sides of the side pod for now. They are supposed to have a green stripe along the top of them. I probably should have added them because it would have made it easier then to add this piece here on the top of the side pod. But having said that, that still went down well, including this part here which folds into the radiator. It needed a bit of encouragement with the sharp blade just to fold over along the cut line, but nothing too scary. However, one thing that I did fail at, I just couldn't make work, was the green stripe that goes along the top of these side pod side panels. So this decal here is supposed to go on, fold over the top and go down, and I just couldn't make it happen. I don't know why. Looking back in the video of it, it looks like such an easy thing, but I just couldn't make it happen. I'm really glad I did this before any of the other logos so that I didn't mess those up. But in the end, guys, I just gave up on it. I couldn't do it, so I just left the decal off there. So it's not 100% accurate, but it'll do for me. Of course, if I'd spray painted it, I wouldn't have that problem. But I didn't want to spray paint now and have a mismatch between the paint and the decal colours. You can see the rest of them went down on the side pod really well, so it's not such a big loss. And in fact, until I came back here to do this commentary for this video, I'd completely forgotten that I'd left that off. I did consider sanding off the raised printed Goodyear logos on the side of the tyres. That's very old school, isn't it? But instead I dry brushed and achieved a fairly decent Goodyear logo, I think. Now here's the only other issue I had in terms of the decals, and it's entirely user error. As I put this top panel on, you'll see there's a tiny fraction of a millimetre overhang of the green, and as I put that on top of the car, those two decals just sort of brush up against each other and sort of tear each other a little bit. And in fact it was worse with these side panels on, because the decal then caught on the bottom part of the chassis and on those side panels too. I did fix that by using a brand new very sharp blade to just trim the decals. If you're going to do that, I would recommend doing it while the decals are still soft. I'd let them dry out a bit before I realised the problem, and therefore it makes it a bit easier to tear the decal by accident rather than cut it where you want. But nevertheless, I was done with my FW07 build, so let's look at some of the final pictures.
And there go Pironi and Rosberg as Jones and Villeneuve battle on at the front. A real ding-dong Dutch Grand Prix in the sand dunes of Zandvoort. Another lap completed. End of lap 10. Alan Jones and Villeneuve closer again. Right in the slipstream, tucked under the rear wing of Alan Jones, and he's coming out of the slipstream. Gilles Villeneuve's going to try and take Jones on the outside of Tarzan. An incredible manoeuvre. Is he going to do it? Jones is fighting back. He's not going to let him, but Villeneuve keeps it on. And in an absolutely magnificent manoeuvre, Gilles Villeneuve, the French-Canadian, 2 times Grand Prix winner this year, has taken the lead in the Dutch Grand Prix. Now, what is Alan Jones going to do about it? Can he do anything about it? I don't know. Of course, I'm not driving the car, but it's obvious that something's wrong with Carlos Reutemann, and Jones is trying. My goodness, Alan Jones has really got the bit between his teeth as he challenges Alain Prost, again coming into the stadium, and he's right through. He's going to take the lead on the inside. He's got the inside line, and Alan Jones must get through here. But Prost is holding on, and what a super. Can you hear the crowd roar in the background? as Alan Prost, with a masterly bit of driving, refuses to give way to the far more experienced Alan Jones, who is driving in his 91st Grand Prix, whereas Alan Prost is only in his 21st Grand Prix. Well, if he can hold his line on the corners and in comparative terms...
So there we go guys, that was my build of the Tamiya Williams FW07, a car from the 1980 season, a kit from the 1980 season, by a builder from the 1980 season. I'm really pleased with this result. I feel like it's one of the better F1 cars that I've built. I think I've learned from my previous cars about just taking that extra time and attention to detail, just making sure the surface is extra smooth, really sanding things well, with some really nice high grit sandpaper, and I feel like that has really shown off in the nice surface of the car here. So I'm really pleased with this one. I haven't quite finished with it, however, because I do have this Motorsports team set 1970 to 1985 from Tamiya, and I am going to make a small sort of base with this car and a couple of figures from it. The kit itself only includes decals for Brabham, Ferrari and another team that I can't think of right now. But I've been really lucky to know Thomas from Building on a Budget Models, who has made some custom Williams team decals for me. So that will enable me to do some of these figures in the Williams team colours and then have the sort of logos and everything on their shirts. So I'm really looking forward to finishing that with a small sort of Williams garage and a couple of sort of figures around there. If you would like to see that build or indeed any other future builds and you haven't done so already, then please do hit the subscribe button. I know that F1 cars are not everyone's cup of tea. I build a variety of things, military, I build a variety of things, aircraft, AFVs, F1 cars, sci-fi, so something for everyone. I would like to say a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters and YouTube members who give me ongoing support for this channel, and it is massively appreciated, so thank you very much guys. And I'd like to say thank you to all of you, of course, for watching and all your likes, comments, subscriptions and so on. It's also massively appreciated. I will be back soon with another build, so thank you again everyone for watching, and until then, have fun modelling.